In the cold emptiness of deep space, where even light seemed afraid to travel, a faint and broken sound cut through the silence. It was weak, full of static, but it carried something that made every human aboard the ship, dauntless horizon, freeze. It was a voice, alien, trembling, filled with terror. And through the translator, one clear word broke through: help. Commander Rhea Morgan stood on the deck, staring at the transmission. Her crew waited in silence, the only sound the hum of the ship's engines. For a moment, she thought it was a mistake, just some old echo from a forgotten satellite. But the signal came again, desperate, pleading. She could hear panic in the alien tone, like someone crying in the dark. The coordinates showed it came from a system far beyond their assigned patrol route, on the edge of Coalition space, a region the Galactic Council had declared safe. But the SOS told a different story. Lieutenant Harper, her communications officer, ran another scan. "It's not human, ma'am. It's coming from a Varan colony. The message repeats every 2 minutes. Looks like it's been transmitting for weeks." He looked up, his eyes uneasy. Someone's been calling for help and no one answered. Rhea felt something heavy settle in her chest. The Varan were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful, soft-spoken beings who avoided conflict. They had no army, no weapons, only their art and their songs. Humanity respected them, even protected them in some trade routes. So why would they send an SOS like this, and why had no one responded? "Patch it through again," Rhea ordered quietly. The bridge filled with that broken sound once more. Static, a burst of alien syllables, then the word help again. Softer this time, almost like a whisper. Around her, the crew exchanged uneasy looks. No one wanted to admit what they were thinking, but Rhea could see it in their faces. Something terrible had happened out there. She turned to the navigator. "How far to the coordinates?" "About 12 hours at full burn, Commander," he replied. "But Galactic Command hasn't authorized any deviation from our patrol. If we leave our sector without clearance..." Rhea already knew the rule. She also knew what it felt like to ignore a cry for help. The memory of another failed rescue years ago still haunted her, the time she had waited for orders that came too late. She wouldn't let that happen again. "Set a course," she said finally. The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the navigator's hands moved over the console. "Course set, Commander. Engaging engines." The dauntless horizon turned in the void, its thrusters flaring blue as it left its assigned path. Somewhere behind them, official orders and bureaucratic voices would eventually realize what she had done. But by then, Rhea hoped, it would already be too late to stop them. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, the crew settled into uneasy silence. Some whispered that it could be a trap. Others believed it was just a ghost signal. But none of them could shake the sound of that plea. Rhea walked the corridors, stopping by each station. She could see fear in their eyes, but also something else, determination. They were human, after all, and humans had always been drawn to cries for help, no matter how far or dangerous the road. Hours passed. The hum of the engines became a rhythm that matched Rhea's thoughts. She stood by the viewing port, staring into the streaks of light that marked their faster-than-light travel. Somewhere out there, someone was dying, waiting. The thought made her fists clench. The universe was full of civilizations that spoke of peace but often turned away when it demanded action. Humanity was different. Maybe reckless, maybe too emotional, but different. Lieutenant Harper came up behind her. "Commander, Command's been trying to reach us. They've noticed we changed course. Tell them we're handling a possible rescue operation. They won't like that." "They don't have to," Rhea said simply. She had spent her life serving under the Galactic Council's cautious rules. The endless waiting, the endless politics. She had seen what happened to those who hesitated. But this wasn't about politics. It was about a simple truth. Someone needed help. Later, in the mess hall, the crew gathered around a hologram of the target planet. It was small, covered in vast forests and silver oceans. A young technician named Juno pointed out the transmission source. "Here under this mountain range. Looks like it's coming from beneath the surface. Underground?" Harper frowned. "Why would a distress beacon be buried?" "Maybe they took shelter," Juno said softly. "Or maybe they were forced to." The words hung heavy in the air. Rhea felt the tension rise, but she didn't let it show. Whatever the reason, we'll find out soon. When the ship finally exited hyperspace, the view that met them was not what anyone expected. The planet was dark. No orbital satellites, no glowing cities, no traffic signals, nothing. Just a quiet, lifeless world wrapped in clouds. The scanners picked up faint energy signatures on the surface, but they were fading like dying candles. Ria's heart sank. "Start a surface scan," she ordered. "Find where that signal's strongest." Minutes passed as the data came in. The display filled with outlines of shattered structures, scorched craters, and what looked like the remains of large cities. The signal was coming from the ruins of one of them, a place once full of life, now silent. The translator worked again, this time managing to decode part of the original message. It wasn't just help. There was more. "They are here. They are killing us, please. Someone." The bridge went completely still. No one spoke. No one breathed. Ria closed her eyes for a moment. Then she turned to her crew. "Prepare the landing team." Within minutes, the dauntless Horizon launched 2 shuttles toward the surface. As they broke through the thick clouds, the devastation became clearer. Entire forests burned to ash, rivers poisoned with black smoke, and towers reduced to twisted metal. The Varan capital, once famous for its crystal architecture, was nothing but rubble. When they landed near the collapsed dome, the air was thick with dust and silence. The team moved carefully, their helmets filtering the toxic atmosphere. A faint sound reached them through the static, movement, breathing. Then a weak cry. They found them under the ruins, 5 Varan survivors huddled together. They were frail, covered in ash and wounds, their silver eyes wide with terror. One of them, an older Varan with trembling hands, tried to speak through the translator. His voice cracked, breaking into sobs. "They came from the stars. They wanted us gone." Ria knelt beside him, offering water, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Who came?" The alien pointed toward the sky, tears streaking his face. "Predators. They came laughing. They said no one would help us." Ria looked at her team, each of them frozen in shock and anger. Around them, the ruins told the same story: slaughter, destruction, cruelty for sport. The survivors had hidden underground, using what little power remained to send the SOS. The message hadn't been a random signal. It had been a cry from a dying world. When they returned to the ship with the survivors, Ria stood in the observation bay, watching the planet spin slowly below. The crew worked quietly, treating wounds, recording evidence, documenting everything. But Ria's mind was somewhere else. She could hear that voice over and over. "They came laughing. They said no one would help us." Her fists tightened. The Galactic Council had done nothing. The neighboring species had looked away. But humans had heard and answered. That meant something. It had to. Lieutenant Harper approached, his face pale. "Commander, we've decoded the full transmission logs from their distress network. The attackers weren't random raiders. It was coordinated. Multiple fleets from known predator species." Ria didn't look at him. "Then it's worse than we thought. What do we tell command?" "Tell them the truth," she said, her voice cold and calm. "Tell them we found hell." She turned toward the viewing port again, her reflection staring back, a tired, angry face lit by the glow of the ruined planet. Somewhere deep inside her, something shifted. Humanity had answered one cry for help. But now that they knew what had happened, there would be no going back. The SOS had awakened something fierce, something that had slept for too long. In that moment, Ria Morgan didn't know that her decision to change course would soon ignite an unstoppable storm. A storm that would shake every corner of the galaxy. For now, all she knew was that someone had begged for help, and she had listened. The dauntless Horizon hung silently in orbit above the ruined world. From space, the planet looked calm, even beautiful. Blue oceans shimmered faintly, and white clouds drifted across green continents. But under that thin layer of peace was only death. The sensors showed massive damage across the surface. Whole cities burned to the ground, heat signatures of recent bombardments, and radiation pockets where energy weapons had torn the soil apart. Inside the ship, the mood was heavy. No one spoke unless they had to. The survivors they had rescued were weak and traumatized, barely speaking except to whisper in fear whenever someone mentioned the attackers. Commander Ria Morgan stood in the medical bay, watching the doctors and medics tend to the Varan survivors. Their skin was pale and translucent, their fragile hands trembling as they clutched at the blankets. One small Varan child kept asking for her mother, repeating the same question in her soft language until her voice broke. Ria wanted to tell her that her mother might still be found, but the truth was written in the ruins below. Most of the Varan were gone. Lieutenant Harper entered quietly, holding a tablet with the latest surface scans. "Commander, we've completed the first analysis of the city," he said. His voice was low, as if afraid to disturb the silence. "The Varan capital is completely destroyed. The main dome collapsed from a series of high-energy strikes. There are no active defense systems left, no military installations, no weapon traces belonging to them. They never even fought back." Rhea took the tablet and scrolled through the images. Streets filled with craters, towers melted by orbital fire, and what looked like mass graves. "Any sign of who did this?" she asked quietly. Harper nodded grimly. "We found traces of plasma residue matching the weapons used by the Dravak Combine. And there are hull fragments from ships registered under the Vorthan Syndicate." Rhea looked up. "Both are predator species. They've been under surveillance for raiding colonies near the border, but attacking a peaceful world like this. It looks like they joined forces," Harper said. "And based on the timing, they hit fast and left before anyone could respond." Rhea handed back the tablet and looked out the viewport at the burned planet below. "They didn't expect anyone to come," she said. "That's why they didn't hide their tracks. They thought nobody would care." Down in the cargo bay, the rescue team prepared to go back to the surface. There were still weak signals beneath the ruins, possible survivors or automated systems that hadn't shut down. The team loaded supplies, medkits, and excavation gear. Despite the exhaustion, every human aboard wanted to help. Even the engineers volunteered to join the search teams. When the shuttles descended again, the scene below was haunting. The air was heavy with ash. The once bright towers of crystal that had marked Varan cities now lay shattered like glass bones. The landing site was near a broken monorail line that led into what used to be the central district. Every step stirred up dust that glowed faintly under their helmet lights. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the team found signs of last resistance, not from soldiers, but from ordinary civilians. Handwritten messages etched into walls, small barricades made of household furniture, and burned communication terminals still trying to send weak distress signals. One of the Marines picked up a cracked data pad and showed it to Rhea. It contained recordings, short video clips of the last moments of the colony. She pressed play. The image flickered to life, showing a Varan woman standing in front of a group of frightened children. Her voice was shaking. "If anyone hears this, we are under attack. They say no one will help us. Please, if you are out there, please." Then the video cut off. The soldiers looked away. No one wanted to meet Rhea's eyes. The quiet that followed was heavier than any explosion. Rhea closed the device and slipped it into her pack. "We'll take this back," she said softly. "The galaxy needs to see it." As they continued searching, they found more survivors, only a handful. Most were too weak to walk, lying among the ruins with vacant stairs. They had survived under the collapsed dome by sealing themselves in emergency shelters powered by old reactors. They hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. When the humans helped them into the shuttle, some of the Varan tried to thank them through broken words, their voices trembling. When the rescue teams returned to the dauntless horizon, the medbay overflowed with activity. Doctors worked without rest. Food rations were cut to provide nutrition for the Varan. The humans didn't mind. They had seen enough to understand that this mission was no longer about following orders. It was about doing what was right. Later, in the command room, Rhea and her officers gathered around a large holographic display showing the system map. The scans had detected debris fields in orbit, destroyed Varan ships, civilian transports, and something worse, signatures from ships that did not belong to the Varan at all. "They left one of their cruisers behind," Harper said. "It's adrift, badly damaged, but we can still access its data core. If we can board it, we might find logs of their communication." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll board it." An hour later, a team in armored suits floated through the silent wreckage of the enemy cruiser. The hull was scarred with burns from plasma fire, likely from the Varan's desperate defense ships before they fell. Inside, the corridors were twisted and full of debris. The air smelled like burnt metal and death. They reached the bridge and found the remains of the attackers, Dravak soldiers. Their armor was designed for war, their claws sharp even in death. But even they had died violently, maybe from an explosion. Rhea's team recovered the black boxes and data modules, bringing them back to the dauntless horizon for decoding. When the files were finally decrypted, the truth played out on the main screen. The attackers had broadcasted their assault to their own people as entertainment. They mocked the Varan's pleas for mercy. One of the Dravak commanders was recorded saying, The Council calls them innocent, but weakness is a disease. We are cleansing the stars." Laughter followed as the recordings showed bombardments and fleeing civilians. The room went silent. Some of the crew turned away in disgust. Others clenched their fists. Rhea stood at the center, her jaw tight. She had seen war before, but this was something different. This was cruelty without reason. The galaxy had always called humans Deathworlders because they came from a violent planet, because they survived things no other species could. But looking at the footage, she realized something. Humanity wasn't the cruelest species in the stars. They were just the ones who still cared enough to be angry. "Send all this data to Galactic Command," she ordered. "Every second of it. Let them see what was done here." Harper hesitated. "You think they'll do something?" "They'll talk," Rhea said bitterly. "They'll hold meetings, issue warnings, but they won't act. They never do, and she was right." Hours later, a message arrived from the Galactic Council. They expressed deep concern and promised an investigation. They advised the Dauntless Horizon not to engage or provoke conflict. They thanked Rhea for her bravery and told her to return home. Rhea read the message twice before deleting it. That night, she walked through the med bay again. The Varen child she had seen earlier was sleeping, holding a small piece of cloth, probably the only thing left from her family. Rhea sat beside her quietly, her heart heavy. She thought about the other colonies, the other worlds. How many more were out there calling for help that would never come? Outside the viewport, the planet turned slowly, its wounded surface glimmering under the faint light of its sun. Rhea whispered to herself, "We heard you." The next morning, she gathered her senior officers. "We're not leaving," she said firmly. "Not yet. We'll finish what we started. We'll bury the dead, rescue who we can, and mark the ones responsible. If the Council won't act, then humanity will remember." The crew nodded. No one questioned her. They had seen enough to know that this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was a promise. Over the next few days, the humans worked tirelessly. They built makeshift shelters, burned away infected areas, and restored power to the underground facilities. They recorded every piece of evidence, every destroyed home, every broken body. The survivors began to trust them, even smile faintly at the humans who worked under the red sky without rest. But the pain never truly left. Each time the sun rose over the ruined horizon, Rhea felt the same fury burn inside her. The kind of fury that didn't fade, it grew. She knew that somewhere out there, the ones who did this were celebrating, confident that no one would stop them. They were wrong. As the dauntless horizon prepared to send its final transmission before leaving orbit, Rhea looked once more at the planet below. The SOS that had led them here was now silent. The beacon had burned out, but its echo lived on, in her crew, in her heart, and soon, in every human across the stars. The universe had forgotten the Varen, but humanity had not, and that single act of compassion, that choice to answer one faint cry for help, would soon awaken something unstoppable. The Deathworlders had heard the call, and their rage was just beginning to rise. News of the Varen tragedy spread through human space faster than light itself. It began as a small report, just another story among thousands in the galactic news feeds, but then the footage arrived. The recordings from the dauntless horizon. The images of burning cities, the terrified faces of children, and the last moments of the Varen who begged for help before being silenced. Within hours, every human colony, every outpost, and every ship saw it, and humanity, a species that had endured wars, disasters, and loss on their own world, felt a kind of anger that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. On Earth, the footage played on every screen. People stopped what they were doing to watch. In cafes, factories, and crowded subways, silence filled the air as the message repeated, the Varen plea, the laughter of their killers, and the calm voice of Commander Rhea Morgan describing the destruction. By the time the video ended, people were crying, shouting, and demanding answers. Why had the Galactic Council done nothing? Why had no one helped them? Why did humanity have to be the only ones to act? The politicians tried to calm the public, calling for patience and diplomatic investigation. But the people didn't want speeches. They wanted justice. Veterans of old wars began speaking out. Engineers started designing defense systems for the Varen colonies. Civilians offered food, medicine, and supplies. It began as a wave of compassion, but soon turned into something far stronger, something that burned with fury. Across Mars, industrial zones turned into volunteer stations. The miners of Ceres stopped their work and began crafting armor plating instead of cargo containers. Pilots offered their ships freely, painting the word Ember Shield on their hulls, a name that soon became known across the stars. Operation Ember Shield was born not from government orders but from humanity's heart itself. Its mission was to protect every surviving Varan and ensure no one else would ever suffer like them again. But under that noble cause, anger was rising. Soldiers whispered that the Council was protecting the predators who had done this. Civilians said that the peace treaties were lies. Humanity had always been called Deathworlders because of the deadly planet they came from. A world of storms, beasts, and danger. The galaxy admired their strength but also feared it. Now that strength was waking up again, this time not for conquest but for vengeance. On board the dauntless Horizon, Rhea Morgan watched the chaos unfold through her communication screen. Her name had become famous overnight. She was the woman who broke orders to answer an SOS. Some called her a hero. Others called her a threat. The Council demanded she return for questioning, but she ignored them. Instead, she focused on rebuilding what she could. Her crew worked with Varan survivors, helping them establish shelters and power stations on safer moons nearby. For the first time in weeks, she saw them smile again. But every time she looked at the stars, she remembered the faces of the dead and the laughter of the predators. One night, as the ship floated in the orbit of a Varan refugee colony, Lieutenant Harper entered her quarters carrying a datapad. His face was pale. "Commander," he said quietly, "you need to see this." He placed the pad on her desk and a hologram appeared, a broadcast from Dravak-controlled space. The Dravak were celebrating what they called the cleansing. Their leader spoke of removing weak species and maintaining the natural order of the galaxy. One of them laughed directly into the camera. "Let the Deathworlders rage," he said. "They bark, but they do not bite." Rhea's jaw tightened. Her hands curled into fists. "They're taunting us," she said. Harper nodded. "And the Council won't stop them. They just issued another statement saying they condemn the violence. That's it. No action." Rhea stood and looked out the viewport at the stars. "Then we act," she said quietly. Word spread quickly among the fleet captains who had fought alongside the dauntless Horizon. They were tired of waiting for permission. They started to form their own defense lines, escorting refugee convoys and intercepting pirate raids. They called themselves the Human Coalition of Protection. What began as a small rescue mission now became a movement. Humanity, once divided by borders and politics, united under one cause: protect the innocent no matter the cost. The predators, however, did not stop. Instead, they attacked again. A convoy carrying Varan refugees to a human-protected sector was ambushed near the outer rim. There were no soldiers aboard, only civilians and volunteers. When the news reached human space, something inside the entire species broke. The recording showed burned transports, drifting bodies, and broken lifeboats. The humans had tried to save them, but they had come too late. The reaction was immediate. Across the colonies, people gathered in silence at first, then began to shout. Protests turned into demands, and demands turned into vows. Messages flooded every channel. Never again. They asked for help. We answered. Now we fight. In the military academies, recruits lined up in record numbers. Engineers stopped producing trade goods and started building ships faster than ever before. Even private traders offered to arm their freighters. The Council warned humanity to stand down, calling them unstable and too emotional, but those words only fueled the fire. The Deathworlders were no longer waiting for orders. Meanwhile, the survivors aboard the dauntless Horizon began to recover. The Varan elders tried to thank the humans, though their voices trembled with both gratitude and fear. One of them, an old male named Kirai, spoke to Rhea one night. "You should not have come," he said softly. "The others, they will make you their enemies." Rhea looked at him, her voice firm. "They already have, and I can live with that." Kirai lowered his eyes. "You humans, you are dangerous, but you are the only ones who listened." That simple sentence stayed with her long after he left. Dangerous but compassionate. Brutal but kind. That was what made humanity different from the rest. They didn't fight for territory or power. They fought because something inside them refused to let cruelty go unanswered. Days later, as Rhea and her crew repaired their ship at a human outpost, They began receiving thousands of transmissions. Messages from other captains, engineers, miners, and even farmers who wanted to help. Some were rough and simple, others detailed and strategic. A message from a shipyard on Titan said, "We're building more rescue ships. Send us the specs." Another from the Luna fleet declared, "If the Predators come again, they'll find us waiting." The SOS from the Varan world had become more than a signal. It had become a spark, a symbol. Humanity turned it into their rallying cry. The recordings of the original message, the trembling voice crying help, were played during training drills and broadcast across fleets. Every soldier, every pilot knew what they were fighting for. It wasn't about revenge alone. It was about making sure no one in the galaxy ever believed again that the weak were alone. But deep down, everyone knew war was coming. The Predators wouldn't ignore the growing human movement. They began spreading propaganda, calling humans warmongers and savages. The Council tried to impose sanctions, cutting off human trade routes and supply chains. But none of it worked. The humans had already learned to survive without permission long before they left Earth. They mined asteroids, built colonies in harsh systems, and thrived where others could not. They were born to endure. On the dauntless horizon, Rhea held a private meeting with her senior officers. "The Council will not protect us," she said. "They will not protect anyone. But we will. If we have to stand alone, then so be it." Lieutenant Harper leaned forward. "If we do this, Commander, there's no turning back. They'll call us rebels." Rhea met his gaze. "Then let them. I'd rather be a rebel with a conscience than a soldier who obeys silence." The crew agreed one by one. There was no hesitation. In the following days, the human colonies began to unite under a shared emblem, the image of a beacon surrounded by flame. It symbolized the SOS that started it all. The humans began coordinating fleets across sectors, forming what the galaxy soon began to call the Ember Armada. Every ship carried the same message on its hull: "We heard you." The Predators laughed at first. They mocked the humans, saying they were emotional creatures chasing ghosts. But that laughter would soon turn to fear, because the humans were no longer waiting for help from anyone else. They were preparing for something much greater. Back on Earth, crowds gathered beneath the holographic beacon that pulsed the same rhythm as the original SOS. People left flowers, messages, and promises. Some wrote, "For the Varan." Others wrote, "For those we couldn't save." And one simple phrase appeared more than any other: "Never ignore a cry for help again." Rhea stood in her command room, watching the fleet reports pour in. Dozens of ships, then hundreds ready to act, each one answering that silent call. The dauntless horizon had started it, but now the entire species had joined. The galaxy had called humans dangerous, unpredictable, and too emotional. Maybe they were right. But what the galaxy had never understood was that when humans felt compassion, it burned like fire. And when that compassion turned to anger, it could change everything. The SOS that had once echoed in the void was no longer a plea from the weak. It was now a warning carried by millions of human voices. The Deathworlders were awake, and they were not going to stand by ever again. The second attack came without warning. A convoy of refugee ships filled with Varan civilians and guarded by a few human escort vessels was moving quietly through the outer rim when the Predators struck. They came out of the darkness, their ships covered in armor black as space, their weapons flashing like lightning. The humans fought desperately, trying to protect the helpless transports, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Within minutes, the first refugee ship exploded. The cries for help echoed across every frequency. "They're targeting civilians! We need backup!" But there was no time. One by one, the Varan ships were destroyed. When it was over, thousands were dead, their bodies drifting among the stars. The news reached the human colonies within hours. The footage, grainy and horrifying, spread across every channel. The galaxy tried to look away, but humanity did not. Across the planets and stations, silence filled the air. People watched the destruction with tears and shaking fists. On Mars, workers left their factories in protest. On Earth, thousands filled the streets, holding up holographic signs that read, "Enough is enough." The Galactic Council called for calm, asking humanity not to retaliate. They said an investigation would begin. But no one was listening anymore. The humans had lost faith in their leaders. They had watched the innocent die twice, and both times the Council had done nothing. The Deathworlders had been patient long enough. On the battleship Crimson Dusk, Admiral Tarek Vaughn watched the transmission of the destroyed convoy in silence. He had fought in wars before, seen planets burn, but something about this was different. This wasn't war, it was slaughter. The old rage he thought he had buried deep inside began to rise again. When the footage ended, he stood up slowly and turned to his officers. "How long do we wait?" he asked quietly. No one answered. "How many more times do we let them kill while we stand by?" His second-in-command looked uneasy. "Admiral, the Council—" Vaughn slammed his fist against the table. "The Council does nothing. They hide behind rules while children burn. Not this time." He looked around the room, meeting each officer's eyes. "We've been called Deathworlders for centuries because we come from a world that kills the weak. But we survived it. We became strong. And now we will show them what strength really means." No one spoke, but the decision was made in that moment. The Crimson Dusk and its battle group began to move. No official orders were given. No requests were sent. They simply changed course and set their coordinates toward Dravak space. The message spread quietly across human fleets. Operation Ember Shield is no longer defensive. The next few days felt like the calm before a storm. Human ships disappeared from trade lanes and communication networks, regrouping in deep space. The Predators didn't notice at first. They believed humans would follow the Council's rules as always. But they were wrong. When the attack came, it was like thunder. The Dravak fleet patrolling near the captured Varan colonies detected something massive approaching. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation. Before they could react, human vessels dropped out of hyperspace, their hulls glowing with energy. They didn't broadcast warnings. They didn't demand surrender. They struck. The first wave of human cruisers opened fire, unleashing plasma storms that tore through enemy shields. The Predators scrambled to respond, but the humans moved with terrifying precision. Their ships didn't just destroy targets, they disabled them, cutting off engines, communication, and power. Within minutes, the once proud Predator fleet was in chaos. On the bridge of the Crimson Dusk, Admiral Vaughn watched calmly as the battle unfolded. "Target their flagships," he ordered. No survivors on the command decks. The order spread like wildfire. Human fighters swarmed through the debris, targeting power cores and weapon systems. They didn't annihilate the enemy fleets completely. They made them helpless. The humans wanted them alive, to see what fear truly felt like. On one of the captured enemy ships, human Marines stormed the corridors, their armor black and marked with the symbol of the flaming beacon, the same one that had become humanity's vow. They found Dravak officers trying to fight back, but they were no match for the humans' fury. When the battle ended, the Dravak commander knelt before the Marines, trembling. You are mad," he hissed. "You kill without mercy." One of the Marines removed his helmet. His face was pale and calm. "You call this madness?" he said softly. "This is justice." Back on the Crimson Dusk, Vaughn broadcast a message across all open channels. His voice was cold and steady. "To the Predators who think the weak are prey, this is your first and only warning. We have heard the cries of those you slaughtered. We are Deathworlders. We do not forgive and we do not forget." The message spread through the galaxy within hours. The Council was furious. They called the attack an act of rebellion and demanded that the human fleet stand down. But humanity didn't listen. For the first time in history, they stood as one species under no flag but their own. On the dauntless horizon, Rhea Morgan received Vaughn's transmission and watched the battle footage in silence. Her crew cheered, but she didn't smile. "It started," she whispered. "The storm." Lieutenant Harper turned to her. "Do you think we did the right thing, Commander?" Rhea looked at him, her expression unreadable. There was never another choice. Over the following weeks, the human fleets pushed deeper into Predator-controlled territories. They didn't conquer, they dismantled. Every shipyard, every slave camp, every war factory was found and destroyed. But what shocked the galaxy most was how the humans fought. They never targeted civilians. They never bombed cities. They offered surrender to those who laid down arms. But those who refused faced the full wrath of humanity. For the first time, the Predators felt fear. They had mocked the Deathworlders before, calling them emotional and reckless. Now they watched entire fleets crumble before disciplined human firepower. The humans' tactics were brutal but precise. They didn't fight for pride, they fought for principle. And the galaxy began to whisper that maybe, just maybe, the Deathworlders weren't the monsters after all. In the ruins of one Predator station, Human engineers found evidence of other planned attacks on peaceful worlds. The logs listed dozens of species marked for cleansing. Rhea Morgan stared at the data in disbelief. They were going to keep doing it, she said. Over and over, Harper's face was pale. And they called us dangerous. Rhea uploaded the evidence to every major network exposing the truth. The footage spread again, proof that the predators had been planning mass exterminations for years. The council tried to hide it, but the truth couldn't be buried anymore. One by one, neutral species began to turn against the predators, refusing to trade or ally with them. Some even offered quiet support to the humans, but humanity didn't seek allies. They didn't need permission anymore. They kept moving system by system, burning out the darkness wherever they found it. One night after another long day of operations, Rhea stood in the command room looking at the stars. The fleet reports showed victory after victory, but inside her there was no joy, only exhaustion. How many more, Harper? She asked softly. Too many, he replied. But fewer than before. Rhea nodded slowly. Then we keep going. The next morning, a large coalition of predator fleets tried to strike back. It was their last attempt to break human momentum. Over 200 ships surrounded a human relief convoy near the border of Dravak space. But the Deathworlders had anticipated it. The Crimson Dusk and the Dauntless Horizon arrived with reinforcements. What followed was the largest space battle in recent history. Lasers and plasma fire lit up the void like a storm of suns. Human ships moved like predators themselves, coordinated and fearless. The enemy commanders shouted for retreat, but their ships were already trapped. In 3 hours, the battle was over. The humans had lost some ships, but the enemy fleets were gone. When the smoke cleared, Admiral Vaughn opened a channel to every frequency in the system. To those who still believe they can prey on the helpless, he said, his voice echoing through the stars. Look upon your fleets and remember this moment. You thought the Deathworlders would fear you. You thought compassion was weakness. You were wrong. The transmission became known as the Wrath broadcast. It was replayed for years to come. Even those who hated humans couldn't deny what they had done. The predators who once ruled through terror were now begging for peace. The council, seeing they could no longer control the situation, declared a ceasefire, but humanity didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer or boast. Their ships stayed in orbit over the liberated worlds, delivering aid and helping rebuild. To them, this wasn't victory. It was justice finally done. Rhea stood on the bridge of the Dauntless Horizon, watching Varan children run under the light of their restored city domes. Harper came to stand beside her. It's over, he said quietly. Rhea shook her head. No, it never really ends. Not for us. We'll always hear the next cry for help. He smiled faintly. Then I guess we'll keep answering. She looked out at the stars, her reflection hard and proud in the glass. Humanity had shown its fury to the galaxy, but also its heart. The predators had learned to fear them, but the innocent had learned to hope again. And somewhere far away, the faint signal of that first SOS still echoed, not as a cry of fear anymore, but as a reminder of what the Deathworlders had become when rage and compassion burned together. Months had passed since the last battle. The stars, once filled with the fire of war, were now calm again. The Varan homeworld, which had once been silent and broken, was slowly coming back to life. The sky was clear, and the sound of rebuilding echoed through the valleys. Where there had been ashes, now there was laughter. The Deathworlders, the humans, were no longer just soldiers here. They were builders, teachers, and protectors. They worked side by side with the Varans, helping them rise again from their pain. Commander Rhea Morgan stood on the edge of a cliff overlooking the capital city. The air smelled of rain and metal from the machines working below. In the distance, she could see towers being rebuilt, domes rising again with light inside them. It was hard to believe that only a few months ago this same place had been a graveyard. Now children ran across the streets, their bright eyes filled with hope. Every time Rhea heard them laugh, she felt something deep inside her. Something that reminded her why she had gone against orders, why she had followed that SOS. Behind her, Lieutenant Harper approached quietly. The last refugee transport arrived this morning, he said. They're all home now. Rhea nodded but didn't take her eyes off the horizon. Home, she said softly. That's a word that means something again. Harper hesitated. You should come see the memorial. They finished it today. She turned slowly, her eyes tired but calm. The memorial. He smiled faintly. You'll want to see it for yourself. They walked through the city together. Everywhere they went, Varan citizens waved or bowed. Some reached out to touch Ria's arm as she passed, whispering words of thanks in their musical language. Though she didn't understand the words, she understood their meaning. Gratitude. Respect. Trust. At the heart of the city stood a large circular plaza. In the center rose a tall structure built from silver and dark steel. Pieces of wrecked human and Varan ships joined together into one form. At the top, a signal beacon pulsed softly with blue light, sending out a rhythm that everyone recognized. The frequency of the first SOS. Ria stopped and stared at it. The sight hit her like a wave. The light wasn't just a reminder of the tragedy. It was a promise that the galaxy would never forget. Around the base were the names of those who had died, carved in both Varan script and human letters. Harper stood beside her silently, letting her take it in. It's beautiful, Ria said finally. They wanted to make it from the remains of your ship, Harper replied. The dauntless horizon might have been destroyed, but now, it lives here. Ria closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered every face she had lost. Crew members who had followed her into the unknown, who had believed that saving one life was worth any cost. For a long time she had wondered if she'd made the right choice. Looking at the beacon now, she knew she had. The Galactic Council had not forgiven her. They had called her actions dangerous and reckless. They said humanity's retaliation had upset the balance of the galaxy. But Ria didn't care about their politics anymore. She cared about the people standing here alive because someone chose to listen to a cry for help. Later that day, she attended a small ceremony near the memorial. Hundreds of humans and Varans gathered together, their faces lit by the beacon's blue glow. Admiral Tarek Vaughn stood on a platform speaking to the crowd. His voice carried across the plaza, strong and steady. We were told to stand down, he said. We were told to wait, to let others decide when justice was allowed. But we heard the call, and we could not ignore it. We acted not out of hatred, but out of duty, to life, to mercy, and to the innocent who had no one else to protect them. He looked at the faces before him. Young Varan children, human soldiers, engineers, doctors. The galaxy will call us Deathworlders forever, he continued. They fear us because of what we can do, but today they will also remember what we choose to do. We are not monsters. We are guardians. The crowd was silent. Then one of the Varan children walked up and handed him a small flower, a glowing petal that shimmered in the night. The Admiral knelt down, took it gently, and smiled. Then let this be our symbol, he said softly. Not the sword, but the hand that helps rebuild. Applause filled the plaza. Even Ria, who rarely showed emotion, felt tears rise in her eyes. The war had changed humanity forever. It had shown their darkest anger and their deepest compassion. And now, it had shown their power to heal. After the ceremony, Ria walked alone to the edge of the city again. She looked up at the stars. The same stars where she had once followed that broken signal. Somewhere out there, other voices were still calling for help. She knew it. The galaxy was wide and cruelty would always exist. But so would hope. Harper joined her quietly again. You think there'll be another call? He asked. There always is, she said, and someone will have to answer it. He smiled. Do you think it'll be us again? Ria looked at him with a small, knowing smile. If it is, then we'll be ready. A soft wind blew through the valley, carrying with it the faint hum of the beacon. Its signal spread beyond the planet's atmosphere, reaching the far edges of the galaxy. To some, it was a reminder of human defiance. To others, it was a symbol of hope. For the Varans, it was the sound of survival. Far away, on neutral worlds, other species watched the broadcast of the memorial. They saw the humans working with the Varans, rebuilding homes and planting new life. Many had once feared the Deathworlders, thinking of them only as violent, unpredictable creatures. But now they saw something different. They saw a species capable of both fury and kindness, a balance the galaxy had never understood until now. In the halls of the Galactic Council, leaders whispered about humanity's growing influence. Some wanted to punish them, to remind them of the laws they had broken. But others knew the truth. The galaxy had changed, and there was no going back. Even those who hated humanity could not deny the results. The predators who had once terrorized weaker species were gone. The Council could claim credit, but everyone knew who had truly acted. Admiral Vaughn soon returned to Earth, where he was quietly stripped of his command. Officially, he was retired with honors. Unofficially, he was a hero. People gathered in the streets to greet him, cheering his name. Reporters asked if he regretted his actions. He looked into the cameras and said, "Regret? Only that we couldn't save them all." His words were replayed for years after. Rhea Morgan, meanwhile, chose not to return to Earth. She stayed with the Varens, helping them rebuild their society. To her, the fight was not over. It had simply changed form. Every morning, she walked through the city to help coordinate rebuilding projects. Every night she returned to the memorial to sit in silence beneath the beacon. Sometimes she would listen to the signal and remember that first day, when a faint voice had said one word that changed everything. Help. The Varens loved her deeply. They called her the listener, the one who heard when others did not. In time, they built a school in her honor, where young Varens learned human languages, history, and science. The first lesson taught there was simple: never ignore a cry for help. Years later, stories about the SOS spread across the galaxy. Some species told it as a legend, others as a warning. They said that if you ever harmed the innocent, if you ever thought you could act without consequence, the Deathworlders would come. You wouldn't hear them at first. Only silence, then a faint signal on your sensors. And by the time you understood what it meant, it would be too late. But to those who suffered and prayed for rescue, that same signal meant something else entirely. It meant salvation. It meant that somewhere out there someone was listening. One night Rhea stood again before the beacon, now old and weathered from the years. The stars above twinkled faintly. She placed her hand against the cool metal and whispered, "You started all this." The light pulsed slowly in response, as if answering her. Harper's voice came from behind her. "We've received another message," he said. "Faint, but it's definitely a distress call. Different system, but the same frequency." Rhea smiled softly. "Then it's time again." He nodded. "We have a new ship waiting." She turned one last time toward the city. The people waved from the streets, knowing that wherever she was going, it was for the same reason she had come before, to answer a voice in the dark. As the ship lifted off, the beacon signal grew brighter for a moment, sending one final pulse through space. It was the same old SOS, but now the galaxy no longer heard it as a plea for help. It heard it as a promise. And far away, in the depths of the void, that promise echoed again and again, reminding every world that when compassion meets fury, when mercy stands beside strength, the Deathworlders will always answer the call.